Hi, everybody. It's Mike and Peter talking about mental health in the legal profession and in general. And we pick up topics that we've either talked about before, but think we should do it again, or something that is kicking about in society in general or in business in general. And you can hear what we think, and we like to hear what you think after our conversation. So very often people get blamed or for having done something. And an excuse is being put up. Oh yeah, well, he or she was having mental health issues, so it kind of doesn't count. Or we're trying to explain things away by, oh yeah, mental health, blame mental health. And I say mental health, I should say poor mental health, because mental health is just a neutral umbrella term describing that we have something called mental health, just like physical health doesn't necessarily mean we have poor physical health. And that's one of the problems in the whole business of mental health, that we associate the term mental health with something negative, a person being unstable. We have to distinguish between good and poor mental health. And yeah, sometimes people get blamed or things get explained away. Just poor mental health.
Yeah, it's an interesting and difficult topic. I think it intersects so much. We see it in our media. We talk a lot about stigma. What's top of mind here in the US lately, and I mean for as long as I can remember, unfortunately, is the sort of political conversation we have when there's a mass shooting. And we have altogether too many of them. We had one this past weekend in Texas at a mall. And it seems like we do the same dance. Anytime, there's a shooting, people on one side say, we need our gun laws to be changed and we need it to be harder to get guns. And then the other side says, don't politicize it. And it's not about guns, it's about mental health. And this person was unhappy or depressed or whatever, and that actually, I think, does so much harm. To me, that's a very scary thing, because I think that blaming mental health sort of heaps on like more stigma. Like I think about the bar associations here, where as part of the character and fitness in many states, New York has gotten rid of it, certain other states have, but still in the majority of states there's a question that says, that asks you if you've ever been depressed or anxious, as part of your character and fitness. And I think what people have shown is that the impact of having that question makes people not seek treatment. And so I think this whole idea that if you suffer from depression or anxiety, it might make you dangerous or sociopathic, or that you have some problem with your character, I think is really, really, really dangerous.
And this is one of the big problems we have, those of us who work in the world of mental health and well-being, because mental health is seen as being personality disorders or depression. That's it. Where mental health is the ability, the degree of which you can actually cope with your everyday life. And just because you have a bad day and feel overwhelmed 1 or 2 days doesn't mean you have depression. Depression doesn't just come and hit you. It's a gradual build-up. And if someone asks me, have you suffered from depression? I would say, yes, I have. Yes, I did want to take my own life at some point. But I worked through that. I've gone past that point. Does that make me today, all those years later, does that make me an unstable person, someone you can't trust? No, it doesn't. So we have to be careful not to let these things define us. Just like the knee I hurt back in high school doesn't define me today. It's difficult because it is so easy to blame and shame and just swipe things under the carpet. Oh yeah, he's poor mental health.
Yeah.
It's logical.
Yeah. It reminded me when we were talking about this topic, it reminded me of an article I wrote for the Good Men Project back in 2015, so 8 years ago, when there was a plane crash, the German Wings plane crash. And I remember watching CNN, and them saying like, oh yeah, it turns out he was depressed and he hid it from his employer, as if that explained,
Mm.
committing murder, which it doesn't. And I really, thought about this issue a lot back then, and have thought a lot about it a lot since. Because one, they're just not connected. I think someone who's depressed is far more likely to, be the victim of violence than to do violence, other than perhaps to themselves. But the other thing is, of course, he didn't tell his employer, because we live in a world where, we're speaking up carries with it,
Mm.
this stigma of, there's something wrong with your character, when in fact, it's really just sort of part of being human. It's on the spectrum. And so, yeah, I think it's difficult. It's an issue that I think about a lot.
I've never come across questions like the ones you talked about with the bar associations, where you're being asked if you've had mental health issues in the past, and that counts against you. I've never been asked that question, but I know that I have deliberately kept that part of my life away from job interviews, because I thought that would count against me. But actually, we all have had a mental health issue in our life. I don't think you can go through life without having had some kind of mental health issue. Big, small, medium, I don't mind, I don't care. But it helps us understand life. It helps us understand the world, that it's not just some pink and fluffy Disney-esque version of life, that actually good and bad things happen. And as a lawyer, I would have thought that you need to understand those things. You need to be aware that the people you work with or work for could also have been through a bad time, or might actually be in the middle of going through a bad time. So why would you not want that as something, okay, that person is now a more rounded, a fuller person than someone who has only experienced straight A's and joy and happiness and prosperity. I mean, life doesn't work like that, does it?
Well, I mean, it's certainly like nice to think about that person might be your lawyer, or that you might be that person, but life isn't so clean in reality. I mean, look, I get it. I think that the issue is, people think, oh, well, if I hire someone for anything who has depression or anxiety, it makes them, they might mess things up. And I think in the middle of any acute, sickness, you might mess things up. But I think the reality is, and look, I learned this myself just from talking about it, because for a long time I thought about, oh my God, like, it's bad to talk about this because people will think that you're weak or less capable, right? But in fact, my personal experience of talking about it is that it's almost always in the real world, with real people, in real conversations, received well, because like you said, it is authentic, and everyone's gone through something, and being able to navigate through those things makes you more resilient, and actually I think better at what you do. But I think it's a big hurdle to get over, that thought that it makes you less competent. So I don't know what you think about that, but I think that's the toughness of the issue.
I think the issue from an employer's perspective is exactly as you said. Oh, that person is less competent than the one who's just a shining example of perfection. Because the employer would think, how many sick days is that person going to take? How many breakdowns will this person suffer in the middle of a complicated case?
Mm.
Will I be able to actually expose my high-paying clients to this person? Or is he or she going to break down in the middle of it? I think all those thoughts, which are based in ignorance and stigma, are coming through because there's a financial aspect as well. So you've got power, you've got finance, you're protecting your own business. So you only want perfection. You only want the clones of some perfect picture. And that picture doesn't exist. And very often when we look to the top of organizations, we find that the people there are just human beings. They are very fragile. They have a life outside of work that could be just as chaotic and just as horrendous as those further down the ranks.
Sure.
But they're at the top, and they have this added pressure of staying at the top and making sure that the company doesn't fold for some reason or another. So of course they go into protection mode and try to protect the business and themselves. And then they look at these things because they're easy to grab at. But yeah, we can always teach people the technical skills, but can we teach them how to fit in, or do we really want to adapt to the person coming in? So there's a lot to worry about, but I think our mental health really shouldn't be one of them, because you want to hire the whole person, not just the legal brain of that person. You can't just take bits of us out. We have to turn up as a whole person to work.
No, that's a great point. The whole person point is a great point. And as you were speaking, I was thinking, we live in reality, and we need leaders who live in reality. And that's why I think talking about these issues and how to navigate these issues, and not just saying when something goes wrong, saying, oh, that person is weak, or oh, there's some mental health issue, but really navigating them is a leadership issue. If you're going to lead in an organization and people are looking at you and you're responsible for it financially, you need to lead people who are both you, the people around you, the people below you, the people above you. You need to be able to navigate these conversations and the reality of people being people, and not just sort of make, the assumptions that like our media seems to make, or that we might make, in politics, like we started talking about, just sort of blaming mental health. And just, meet people where we are in reality. And I think the result of that is, I think, actually better work product, better leadership, more satisfaction. I think it aligns, but it is hard to get there because of the stigma that we've been talking about, that this issue frames.
Absolutely. I think it takes longer if we take the time to figure out who we are as individuals, rather than just present you with a kick out the door, because that's the easy way out, isn't it? Oh, Mike doesn't fit, let's fire him for some spurious reason. Instead of figuring out, well, why is this person not firing on all cylinders? What can we do to help? Because actually he's a very good lawyer. So let's do what we can do. It will be interesting to hear what your experiences are out there. Have you been hit with the stigma? Are you yourself guilty of exercising that stigma? Are you willing to talk about it? That's another thing. Let us hear what you think, and thank you for watching. Take care. Bye.